Hey folks, welcome back. So if you've been following my story so far here, the last few videos, I've been gradually reaccumulating a bunch of stuff for two of my favorite games, Starfleet Battles and Federation Commander, which are actually sister games, if you like. Starfleet Battles being the older and more complicated game, and Federation Commander being the somewhat flashier, newer, and a bit faster playing game. But both coexist quite nicely together, and I find both really worth playing. You don't have to go with one necessarily over the other. But I have sizable collections of both, and now that I've started to mostly reaccumulate what I lost, I'm starting to get into some stuff that I didn't have before as well, which is really exciting. So today I got a big old shipment here, actually two shipments, one from Clifton Road Games and the other from Leisure Games here in the UK. I can't remember now which bits of this pile were from which, but both stores are really good, and whatever they have in stock for Federation Commander and Starfleet Battles, do go check them out. I've had very reliable service from both, and I know Leisure Games at least regularly restocks from ADB to get more stuff in these game lines. So definitely one to watch if you want to try out some Starship battles in the Starfleet universe. So without further ado, I'm just going to go through and show off what I got today. I'm not going to go into a great amount of detail on each thing. Famous last words. I tend to talk and talk and talk, but we'll see how it goes. I'll just flick through. We've got a whole bunch of booster packs here, so lots of new ship cards for Fed Commander. Then we've got a couple of modules for Starfleet Battles. Then we've got a expansion for Federation Commander called Transports Attacked. Then we've got a Line of Battle as well. We've got a Annex compilation, which is a book of charts basically for Starfleet Battles. And then finally, the Federation Commander Tactics Manual, which I was really looking forward to. So let's dive in. We'll start with the, let's start with the Starfleet Battle stuff first, because Starfleet Battles came first, didn't it? It seems fair. So first off, we have Module X1, the X ships. Now you can see the cover art here is a more hand-drawn style. Many of the newer modules in both these systems use CG-rendered starships. This is a really nice hand-drawn style. You can see Klingon D7 here firing off some drones, trailing some plasma, heading towards a Constitution-class cruiser over there. We've got some cool space scenery going on. Now, Module X1 actually came out in 1994, when SFB was still published by Task Force Games. And actually, it hasn't really been updated since then, as far as I know. There was an initial version of X ships many years ago that had some flaws in the rules. So it was heavily revised when they revised the whole SFB system back in 1989 or 90, something like that. And X1 got a big revision. And actually, a little bit annoyingly, there are a number of rules in here that are sort of wiped out by X1R, the follow-up module here. So they really, hopefully, will do an update for the original X1 at some point, get all the errata in there, get the rules nice and tight so you don't need both rule books to kind of reference. Although if you get the Starfleet Battles Master Rulebook, then you can avoid that whole problem. But the point of X1 and X1R is that this is the next stage of technological advancement in starships in the Starfleet universe. So in the history and the timeline of the game, you have this big 18-year-long general war. All the empires are going against each other. At the end of the war, sort of the very last stages of it, the empire is under pressure to try and close things off, create what they call X technology, which is the next generation tech for weapons and starships. And these new generation X ships are super powerful. They have a lot more power, a lot more flexibility. And so these two modules here are showing off X technology, telling you how to use it in the game system. And you'll see that they really are very, very beefy indeed. Some people don't like using X ships because they seem a little bit too powerful. They pretty much always have enough power to do what they want for the first stages of the battle. You don't have to make a lot of decisions to conserve power. But to me, I don't mind that because, if I was going to build a giant starship with 1,000 crew members in it, I would try to build it so that I had enough juice to run all the systems at once, right? And then, if I got beat up, that might change. But at least the baseline should be I can power all my weapons and everything without making major sacrifices. So at least it makes intuitive sense that they would try to reach that point. But depending on your style and your taste, it may not necessarily be as tactically interesting in the early stages of the game, at least. But I think it's cool. It's a good change of pace, and it's fun to play with super powerful starships. So what do we get in here? We get a 64-page rulebook, which includes all the X technology stuff. rapid pulse phasers, faster arming heavy weapons, new drones, new fighters, faster speed, better power systems. Then we've got 16 new scenarios, 2 full campaigns to use X ships, and then 96 pages of SSDs and 108 counters. So I'm not going to go through all that stuff because, that's a lot of stuff. Well, we'll just flick through. This is the rulebook. As I said, some of it is kind of overtaken by recent errata and changes to the X ship rules. But just to give you an idea, basically the idea is all these ships have more power, more speed, and they can do more stuff at once. They're better at multitasking. So there's new rules in here for combat. So X ships can change speed faster. They can reverse better. They have better shields. They've got different fire control systems that are more flexible. They take less critical hits. They've got new types of drone defenses. They've got here's a rule that was taken out actually. So you can see there's the possibility of overloading your phasers. That was completely removed. So they found this to be too powerful. And just took it out of the game completely. I think that's a bit of a shame. It's fun to overload stuff, and you can imagine in the show them saying, "Scotty, more power to the phasers" or whatever. But it unbalanced the game too much, so they got rid of that. But you do have phasers that, for example, if you have a phaser 1, you can choose to fire it a couple of times as a phaser 3 instead, which is really useful when you're fighting drones or small units. Then you've got the ability to fast charge your heavy weapons like your disruptors. You can fast load your photons. You have fast loading options for a lot of the heavy weapons. And then weapons where you can pump in variable amounts of energy like the webcaster or the expanding sphere generator. You can pump in more energy than you could before. Then we've got some new drones, new guidance systems. You've got swordfish drones, spearfish drones, which do internal damage. Then there's some new plasma torpedo rules. So you have the Type M, which is not as big as the gigantic Type R, but it's almost as big, and it's easier to put on a ship without overloading the power system. So that gives them a way in the X rules to kind of get more powerful plasma torpedoes in without kind of totally overwhelming things. You've got the Type L plasma torpedo, which basically upgrades your Type F launchers. You've got, there's a lot of different stuff here, but each individual rule is just a change to an existing one. So it's really not too difficult to get your head around. Then we've got, this is our background info for all the X ships in the product. We've got a new X ship energy allocation form accounting for the changes. And then we're going to have some more background stuff. Then we've got our scenarios. So there's a lot in here, a lot to do with the ships that are just in X1. However, unfortunately, to play it to the current standard, you really do need to have X1R or the master rulebook to make sure you get the rules right. Then we've got our 108 counters. These are in the old style because they haven't been updated. You can see the ship designations here include X, which is a nice way to tell if you're dealing with an X ship or not. And you can see we got a nice selection for pretty much everybody. The Feds, the Orions, Klingons, Hydrans, Romulans, Tholians, the Gorns, some generic X units, the Kazintis, the Romulans, the Lyran Democratic Republic, the ISC, the WIN, and the Lyrans as well. There's no Andromedan X units in this product, but there are in Module 3A, which is a really good module, which I will talk about at some point in the future. And look at this nice thick SSD book. Tons of stuff in there. This is an interesting one because when you flip through this book without any knowledge of the X rules, you think, well, it doesn't seem that much different than what came before. But really, you need to understand all the new systems and options you have at play to see how powerful these ships are. You can see you've got a pretty good selection here. You've got star bases. You've got some generic units. Then you've got advanced cruisers, destroyers, and frigates, and some more specialized ships for pretty much all the main players. So they give you a lot right off the bat in this product. Everything you need to do some exciting battles between big X ships slugging it out. We'll pick a couple at random just to show you. So here's a Romulan K7X Advanced Cruiser. So some of the stuff, as I say, it's not really obvious. So most X ships will have this note that they can control a number of seeking weapons equal to double the sensor rating, which is 6. That was the case before with the bigger Kazinti ships because they specialize in drones, but now everybody can shoot drones out, and they got better drones as well. They're faster, and there's some additional options. Then you have other stuff like the batteries for X ships can carry 3 points of power for each space rather than 1, which makes a huge difference in how much reserve power you have during the course of a battle. And this guy has the new Type M torpedo, bringing it a step up above the Type S. So smaller ships that can't fit the Type R, they now get the Type M, and it does significantly increase their reach and power with plasma. So it's pretty cool stuff. And we'll maybe look at one or two more. Here's a Gorn Advanced Medium Cruiser. You can see as well that because of the X technology, the point value goes up quite a bit. So a medium cruiser in the normal general war timeline, you might expect to be, 140 points, and this is 240, so it's a lot stronger. So what do we got here? We got our basic Type 1, Type 3 phasers, sturdy Gorn-style construction. We got a couple of Plasma S's, 2 Plasma M's in the middle, which is nice. And decent amount of batteries and labs as well. So pretty well-balanced ship, I would think. Nothing sort of super standout about it, but, it's going to have that X technology, so it'll be a tough customer for sure. What do we got here? Maybe is there an LDR ship we can look at? Well, how about the Hydrans? They're my favorites. Here we go. So here is a advanced scout destroyer. Again, a destroyer is typically not worth a whole lot of points outside of the X rules, but here it's a full 200 points, plus it can hold 100 points of fighters. And these are Stinger X fighters. They're advanced fighters. They move at speed 20 instead of 15. They got more oomph, more speed, more power, and this ship also has 4 special sensors, which allows it to do all this cool stuff here, like breaking lock-ons, getting rid of drones, identifying drones, finding mines, all that stuff. So this is a really flexible and powerful ship, and it's kind of characteristic of this expansion in general. A lot of the X tech is about expanding your flexibility, giving you ships that can play a lot of roles at once. And it's pretty interesting. So it's a very different feel from, if you play especially the early years modules where ships are really kind of limping around without much flexibility or power. These ships are really kind of self-sufficient. They do a lot of different things at once. So that's X1, all the basic ingredients to fight in an era of advanced technology in the Starfleet universe. Then a number of years later, we had the release of X1R, X-Ship Reinforcements. You can see here we're in the modern era of very nicely rendered CG illustrations here. Yeah, that looks like a more modern take on a new heavy cruiser or that kind of thing. Pretty cool, nice kind of streamlined nacelles on there. And that's from Adam Turner. He's done a lot of great art, cover art for the SFU over the years. So in X1R, this one you get another 96-page SSD book, so a ton of new stuff. And you've got some ships that kind of build out your fleets in the X era. So you've got raiders. They can carry gunboats, fighters, and mega fighters as well. You get specialist roles like war destroyers, heavy cruisers, modular heavy war destroyers, scout cruisers. You have X maulers for attacking bases. Then you have X bases themselves. You got support ships for drone bombardment, all kinds of stuff like that. Then you've got some unique examples of X ships that weren't built in large numbers, but were failed projects or unique experiments. You got some new weapons with X technology, like the particle cannon and shield breaker for the Saltorians and the web cracker. Then you have the controversial addition of partial X refits. So this was a set of rules that basically allows you to take a non-X technology ship and pay extra battle point value points to put some X technology on it. Lots of people wanted this, and they pointed out that, historically when, naval technology advanced, typically older ships would get refits with the new weapons, and it would be a kind of gradual transition to new platforms that used all the new tech. And so the designers said, okay, well, we'll give it a try. And now, anytime this module is mentioned on the official forums, the designers express huge regret about the partial X refits rules. I've never used them. This is actually my first time owning this module, so it's probably not something I will use unless I was in a campaign going into the X technology era or something. But seems really controversial. Some people really like it, but the designers seem to really regret publishing it. So what do we get here? We got the rulebook. Now, one thing you will note in here, it should be in the table of contents somewhere. So, yeah, corrections to Module X1. So, there's not a lot of new rules in X1R. You've got the X tech for web breakers, shield crackers, particle cannons, transporter artillery, some of the web anchor buoys, and then this controversial partial X refits, which is actually most of the rules, because once you get to page 9, you're already into ship descriptions. And after that, you have some general scenario, historical scenarios, and then the annexes and master ship charts. So it's only 9 pages of rules, but there are a number of corrections. So I can show you what that looks like. Yeah, here. So, let's see. Shield repair. There's some shield repair errata. All rules pertaining to weapons misfires are deleted. All references to such rules are to be ignored. So there's a few things like that where they completely excise something. So overloaded phasers, there we go. All rules pertaining to overloaded phasers are deleted. All references to such rules are to be ignored. Rapid pulse phasers, those are unchanged, but no overloaded rapid pulse phasers. There's a bunch of deleted rules. It's a bit of a shame. I mean, again, the master rule book, you can avoid all this nonsense, but I really wish they would do a full-out update of Module X1, give it the new counters, get the rules all sorted out, so that people don't have to buy X1 and then discover they were playing it wrong, basically, because they didn't have the updates from X1R. But X1R is a more modern module. It's from 2008, so we do get the fancier counters with color ship designs on them. And really, you can see you get a ton more stuff, basically. So the Kazintis get a whole couple rows of new ships. The Hydrans as well. Got some cool stuff in here. And some additional Pegasus-class cruisers over here. Saltorians get a few X ships. WYN Cluster gets a bunch as well, all the way down here. A whole bunch for the ISC and the Lyrans. Tons of great stuff for the Feds, and a little bit for the Orions. Even the Jandarians get into the game a little bit, the strange asteroid dwellers. Then we've got battle stations, and we've got our Klingons. They're subject race to the Vudar. They just get 2 things. I feel a bit sad for them. The Tholians and Neotholians get a bunch of X-Tech, the Romulans, and of course the Gorns, and a few tidbits for the Lyran Democratic Republic, which is always a good thing, in my opinion. Those ships are fun to play with their Gatling phasers. So, this is a new module for me. I haven't really seen this. So now that I've accumulated enough of the stuff I lost, I'm getting into new purchases. So yeah, there's a whole bunch of pretty cool stuff in here for all the different empires. We have, like mentioned on the back, we've got some specialized stuff like drone destroyers. We've got new heavy scouts, heavy fighter carriers, which are cool. We got stasis cruisers for the Klingons. They use the stasis field generator that freezes enemy ships in space-time, which is very scary. We've got some Romulan advanced tech, including a Mauler. We've got some bombardment cruisers, fast patrol ship tenders, heavy fighter carriers for the Kazintis. A bunch of cool sounding stuff for the Tholians, including some PF tenders as well. Orion Businessmen's Association. Of course, my friends the Hydrans got some cool stuff. Yeah, so this is a great, significant expansion to the X era in the game, which is really cool. Look at a few things here before we move on. Here's a Federation GVX Advanced Technology Medium Carrier. So this uses the much beloved F-111 heavy fighter, which has some unique rules associated with it that allows it to be heavily customized. The Federation didn't use the so-called fast patrol ships that other empires used, which were bigger than fighters, and were basically very dangerous little ships packed to the gills with weapons and not much else. The Federation instead went with these heavy fighters, but there are alternative timelines in Starfleet battles where you can play Federation with PFs, but that's another story. But there's a lot of cool tech on this carrier. Besides the F-111s, we've got 4 special sensors for all the scout functions. We've got the upgraded X-Tech photon torpedoes, upgraded phasers, of course. It's going to be a fearsome customer. Point value 295, so that is massive. And each fighter is how many points? 19 as well. So, yeah, this ship packed with all its heavy fighters is going to be a real nightmare. Let's see, how about, got some Klingons. Okay, here's a Kazinti heavy fighter carrier. You can see these are big, chunky heavy fighters, the LFS fighters. 2 phaser 3s in the front, 2 in the rear. They're quite resilient as well. And look at all those drones. Those triangles are all drones. And then they have 4 disruptor charges as well. So these little guys can pump a lot of firepower out. This carrier is less pointed than the Federation one. It's only 175. But yeah, I mean, bringing in 6 heavy fighters is nothing to sneeze at. We have our disruptors, which can be fast overloaded in the X rules, mind you. And the upgraded phasers. Yeah, lots of cool stuff in here. All right, we'll move on to... Got some Neotholians. I wanted to see their PF tender. Here we go. So PF tenders are ships specialized to carry those fast patrol ships I was talking about. These sort of overgunned, tiny, they're smaller than frigates, basically. And these big tractor spaces down here to hold a flotilla of 6 PFs on it. And the X technology helps to keep those, better delivered to the front line in one piece. Yeah, and we have just phaser armaments on here, plus some scout sensors. I don't think we have webcasters on this one. No, there's not even a regular web device. Interesting. The heavy war destroyer, however, what do we have here? Here we got disruptors, a bunch of phaser ones, a couple of fighters as well. And we've got some option mounts back here, so I wonder what you can do with those. Interesting. Yeah, there's a lot I don't know about the X rules. I haven't really played in this era very much, so... and especially now we have X1R with all these rules updates. I really need to reacquaint myself with all this stuff. The Mongol X, advanced version of a good workhorse for the Hydrans. Got the Mohawk X as well. As is typical for the Hydrans, we've got Stingers everywhere, but these are the new and improved Stinger X's, which is great. We've got Lyrans. Yeah, tons of great stuff in here. I'm really excited about this. This is one of the first new SFB modules that I picked up during this program to replace my collection. Here we've got the ISC with some fighters, but these are not X technology fighters. The ship is using X technology, of course, but not the fighters. I think in this official timeline of the Starfleet universe, only the Hydrans built X technology fighters. Yeah, so that's X1R. Tons of stuff for me to discover in there. Really excited to reacquaint myself with the X era in SFB and really just learn more about what it's all about. All right. The last SFB item we have for today in these boxes is nothing really worth shouting about. I also bought recently, again, the 3 early years modules, which are the total opposite of the X1 and X1R. This is going back well before the General War, the beginning of the Federation and stuff like that, and the ISC was still 5 separate races, and you have ships in the early years for Andorians and the different sub-races of the Federation and these different alliances, which is really neat. And everything is slower, everything is simpler. It's really nice to play in, actually. It's the opposite of X1, where you're overloaded with options. Earlier ships are really basic, to the point. Drones are slower, ships are slower, they've got less power. But it's really fun, an interesting twist on the game. But, over the years, there have been 3 early years modules with a lot of material, so they released this annex volume with all the kind of updated errata and master ship charts, all the info you need to make sure your time with those modules runs smoothly. So, again, nothing exciting. You really need to have those 3 modules to care about this at all, but I thought it would be handy for me to have this. I got an electronic version as well, but, it's always nice to have the dead tree. All right, now into the FedCom stuff. So we'll start with Transports Attack. This is the last attack module, which I did not own. I put this off for a long time because it is about transports, and frankly, it seems kind of boring. But, I'm a completionist, so I had to get it eventually. The idea is that, they pitch it as, flying transports and lightly armed kind of cargo ships and stuff is a greater challenge for the pilot, and I certainly think that's probably true. But, it's more for scenario-based play. I think if you're going to fight a duel with somebody, you won't really use any of these ships. But I do like playing scenarios, so, I do think it'd be worth having that this module for that. There's almost no new rules in here, as far as I know. There's just a couple of scenarios, rather. There's some rules for tugs and cargo pods, which really is pretty straightforward. Now, this module comes with 3 extra freighter cards. So if you're hurting for freighters, get yourself a copy of Transports Attacked. And they function at both squadron scale and fleet scale exactly the same. You can see, extremely lightly armed. They're just going to be very slow. They've got Phaser 3. That's it. On the other side of these, we have heavy freighter, large freighter and squadron scale. These have a little bit more armament, and they're kind of like 2 small freighters just kind of stuck together. Anyway, again, mostly useful for scenario play. Then we have 16 other ships, as you typically find in an attack module for FedCom. I'm not going to go into detail with these, but you can see the theme here. This is a light tactical transport for the WIN cluster. There's a cargo pod here. A lot of these ships, they give you now 2 columns of the turn mode and speed information here. One without the cargo pod and one with the pod. So during a scenario, if you get desperate, you need to run away, you can kind of drop your cargo or your freight, whatever, and get more speed and jaunt off. So that's a new element of play with these kind of ships. Yeah, as is typical with these guys, it's mostly drones, phasers, and disruptors as well. They're a little bit similar to the Orions. We've got the Saltorians with a light tactical transport. They have a cargo pod as well, and cargo in the hull. They do still have 10 weapons on here, so that's not too bad. Particle cannons at the front, and some phaser 1s elsewhere. Then we've got the Lyrans, as is typical for a lot of the physical cards in FedCom. Rather than have a separate card for the Lyran Democratic Republic version of these ships, they just tell you what the battle value would be for the LDR version and how to make that happen. So you basically just replace these Phaser 3s with Phaser Gatlings and make it cost more points, which is, simple but close enough. Here, again, we have a cargo pod, which can be dropped, and it can carry 2 pods as well. And we've got what you would expect: disruptors, Phaser 2s, Phaser 3s, and a couple of expanding sphere generators. We've got a Andromedan Fleet Tug, which still has some fighters, so that's good. I always like fighters on my Hydrons. And you can see the fighters launch from these slightly different colored shuttle boxes there. Pretty decent amount of warp, so hopefully it's not super slow. Turn mode, C without a pod, D with a pod is actually not bad. It's not too bad. Gorn Tug can have a couple of pods on there. These guys always turn like cruise ships anyway. With 2 pods, it's a turn mode E. But turn mode D for a Gorn is actually not super terrible. But you just have small plasmas on this one. Plasma F, looks like. Then we have a Kazinti Tug, which still has a decent amount of drone racks, 4 drone racks, so that's all right. And anti-drones as well to protect the cargo, presumably. Big movement chart here. So with 0-1 pods, with 2 pods. Oh, they've spread it out sideways rather than vertically up the card. Romulan Transport Tug. Yeah. Got phasers, plasma Fs and phaser 3s. We got plasma D in the back. So really, despite the size of this thing, it's quite lightly armed. Definitely will need an escort. Same again for the Klingons. We've got 180D, some phaser 2s in the front, and only 2 disruptors and 2 drone racks. Mostly it's defensive armament, isn't it? We're back to the WIN again. Okay, then we'll go through the other cards as well. We've got a Tholian LTT, which has actually a decent phaser armament at least. We've got 4 phasers in the front, still a couple of web generators, and some phaser 3s. So I feel it's a bit vulnerable around the sides and the rear here. We've only got some more punchy phasers up front. Gorn Heavy Destroyer Transport. So still we're just stuck with Plasma Fs, Phaser 1s and 3s. Hydran Mule Light Tactical Transport. This one has still 4 fighters, so that helps. Phaser Gs in the back to get rid of chasing drones, I suppose. But doesn't look like there's any Hydra and heavy weapons. No fusions or Hellbores. Just Phaser 2. So definitely going to need the protection of these fighters. Romulan Sparrowhawk H light transport cruiser. Yeah, at least we have plasma S's here. That's good. Get 30 points of plasma. And some Phaser 1s in the front. So it's a little bit tougher than the other Romulan transport. Lyran light tactical transport. So we just got a couple of ESGs. Phaser 3s on the side. 2 disruptors up front. Yeah, not too bad, actually, for 100 points. Kazinti medium tactical transport. 3 disruptors in the front. 4 drone racks. Yeah, could be worse. And, drones are cheap. You don't need to spend energy to use them. So it seems like a good armament to have for a transport that might be short on engine power because they're towing lots of stuff. Klingon D5H light tactical transport. What do we got here? 4 disruptors. This is a little better. Maybe a bit more punch to this one. And the Feds, finally. Federation light tactical transport. We've got a lot of cargo in the saucer section. And a big cargo pod down below. And Phaser 1s and a drone rack, but no photon torpedoes. Alright, so that gives you a general flavor of what this module is like. It's really not going to excite you if you're looking for big punchy ships for duels. It really is more about fleshing out fleets and putting together scenarios and stuff. And I think that, there's a place for that in games like this. I mean, a lot of people do enjoy playing campaigns of, trying to have the Federation fight off a war with the Klingons or whatever, and these games are great for that. But you should know what you're doing going in. One thing that you'll see in a minute when I get to the booster packs is that this is another module like Reinforcements Attacked, where pretty much every single card in the boosters associated with Transports Attacked are brand new to the game system. So that's also cool. But again, assuming you like these kind of ships. The other thing I got, which I had sort of put off getting for a long time for no real reason, is this guy, Line of Battle. So these are all big battleships here. Now you may be thinking, well, why get this when you have Battleships Attack already? Well, this module is basically just a slimmed down version of that package with duplicates of the main battleships from that product, but also 2 more battleships that weren't included in Battleships Attack, and 3 new scenarios as well. So there is actually a purpose to getting this. Besides the fact I wanted to have doubles of some of the main battleships, I wanted to get the Hydra and the Lyran battleships as well, which were not in the original product. So actually quite excited for this one. So very, very thin booklet here, just a few scenarios. And then the meat of the thing is these gigantic ship cards. So this cost me £16.99, which is about £7 more than a typical booster pack, which is not bad. I mean, considering you get some game scenario content and you get these gigantic cards, and there's more cards as well. That's actually a pretty reasonable price. As usual, ADB's physical products are a pretty decent value. It's just the PDFs I have an issue with. So I won't go into these because I've shown you these in my other video when I was talking about Battleships Attack, but we've got the Fed Battleship again, the Klingon B-10 Classic, the Romulan King Condor with its many plasma tracks here. We've got the Kazinti Battleship with its million drone trackers here. Look at all those weapons. Look at all that stuff. Then we've got the Gorn Godzilla Battleship, which I like due to the name as well. One of my favorites here, the Neotholian Battleship. Then we have the gigantic Saltorian Battle Wagon with all of its phaser armament in the front and the rear, and web breakers all up and down the side. Then the Hydrans at last. Look at this guy. Fantastic. This is the Monarch Battleship. 390 points plus 120 points of fighters. So we get 12 fighters, which work out to 10 points each. They have a couple of fusion beam charges, and they've got phaser Gatlings on them, which really will tear things up at close range. But they do have to get to range 0, 1, or 2 to do anything major. And this ship is packed with weapons as well. We've got, what's that? We've got 11 phaser 1s in the front, 6 Hellbore beams, which are brutal. Then fusions on the side arcs, and 2 Hellbores in the rear as well, and phaser Gatlings to fend off drones and chasing other ships. So that's really cool. I'm really glad to have this because I am a big Hydran fan. Then we've got the Lyran Cave Lion Battleship, which also looks really cool. The Lyran Democratic Republic didn't build battleships, it said, but if they had, they would have followed the pattern of all the other ships and replaced the side-mounted Phaser 3s with Phaser Gs, increasing the point value to 342. Okay. Again, look at all those weapons. 26 weapons on this thing. So yeah, it's basically an upsized version of what you would expect from a typical Lyran large ship. We've got lots of Phaser 1s and Phaser 3s. We've got 4 disruptors up front, and then we've got 4 expanding sphere generators. Some more disruptors in the rear as well, which is pretty cool. So if you overrun, ram somebody with your expanding sphere generator, with several of them even, then you can pump them full of disruptor beams on your way out as you overrun them. So that's pretty cool. Yeah, so really glad to have those new battleships. If I could go back and do it all over again, I would tell you in my other video that once you are kind of accustomed to battleships attack, and you're thinking about moving on to new races and stuff, definitely pick up Line of Battle to get those new battleships as well. As per usual, you get an extra map board, which in this case has Jupiter, gas giant, which is pretty cool at the 2 different X sizes, so that's fun. Yeah, so really glad to have my hands on that at last. Very cool addition to the collection. I do love those gigantic ship cards. All right, then we've got the other item I've been waiting for my collection for a while, the nice and hefty Federation Commander Tactics Manual. So here we have tips on how to play the game well. So the art and science of maneuvering, selecting the right speed, battle passes, etc., combat specifics, tips on specific weapon systems, ship systems, dealing with terrain, fighting against different empires, fighting with different empires, special tactics for battleships, frigates, convoys, bases. So lots of great stuff in here. I can't wait to get into this. This was all put together by Patrick Doyle, who has for many years running been the strongest Federation Commander player in all the tournaments. He's a real wizard at this game. So definitely he's the one you want to go to for advice. Actually, just for a sampling here. So there's some... I did flick through this briefly when I opened the box, and this stuff about maneuver looks really great because it clears up, I think, the big questions that beginners have in this game and in Starfleet Battles as well is, how do I start? Once I've got my phasers energized and I'm all set to charge towards my opponent, how do I put up a chase? How do I evade? How do I, maneuver my ship in an effective way? And they really did a great job with the basics of that, it looks like, in here. So I'm really excited for that. What I wanted to look at to see what they give us is... Actually, is there like a table of contents? Did I miss that? Oh, yeah. I wanted to look at battleship tactics because that's an interesting specific topic. Okay, page 100. Let's check that out. There. Oh, perfect. So battleships are really interesting because one of the things you'll notice in this game and in Starfleet Battles as well is that if you have equal points of one gigantic ship like a battleship and then a set of smaller ships fighting against it, the bigger ship tends to win out and have an advantage because the way things scale in these games works out that you might be able to punch through the shield of the giant battleship and damage a few internal systems, but everything is scaled up with the size. All of its systems are bigger, including its power systems, repair systems. So you may punch through its huge shields and do a little bit of damage, but then suddenly it'll use its reserve power. Its shields are getting repaired. All the damage systems are coming back online, and it feels like impossible to take them down. So I find interesting trying to work out how to take down the biggest ships in these games. It's really a tactical challenge. Okay, so this is about using your battleships. While there's nothing stopping you from dueling with battleships, they'll often be involved in multi-ship engagements. That's true. Fleet tactics, formations, and specific fleet compositions are beyond the scope of this article. However, because protecting the battleship is so important, we will discuss the proper use of escorts. Wow, so there will be a little bit of discussion of fleet tactics in here as well. That's great. Yeah, so this is what I was talking about before. Battleships have a tremendous ability to repair themselves. With damage control ratings of 8, they can restore numerous systems every turn. If you're attacking a battleship, do not give it a chance to recuperate once you start attacking it. Yeah, so there's looks to be just an absolute treasure trove of tactical tips in here. I'm really excited to have this finally. Again, the PDF was too expensive, and I refused to pay that money, but I will pay that price for a Dead Tree product. So eventually I did finally get it. I hope someday ADB will put a sale on and I can get some of these things in PDF as well, but I don't want to pay $25 for it. Okay, finally. So I got a whole bunch of booster packs here. Oh boy. There we go. So I've been trying to basically complete my Federation Commander booster pack collection. A lot of these are going to be repeats of things that you find in the attack modules, plus a few extra things here and there. But like I said, what's interesting is that the Transports Attack module is one where every ship in there is new. So what I'm going to do is very quickly spool through these guys, and then I'll focus in a bit more on what's in the Transports Attack booster set, since those are all going to be new to me. So Booster 7 is reinforcements for the Federation. I think this is tied in with the very first sets. Yeah, it's kind of expanding the Romulan border or Klingon border set. So this basically just has some really great workhorse ships for the Federation. The new Command Cruiser is the new one for the volume for this booster. It's a great little ship. And we have a couple of new light cruisers, a couple of new heavy cruisers, war destroyers, and we have some armed priority transports as well, and armed cutters. So pretty decent stuff in there. One thing to note, if you're used to SFB, you wouldn't necessarily use things like new cruisers all that much because you're going to be restricted by what era of history you're playing your scenarios in and so forth. Federation Commander doesn't care about that stuff. A ship card is a ship card, basically. So there are general eras. There's early years, middle years, and current gen, kind of. And there will be X ships as well in Federation Commander. But within those timelines, you can play anything you want against anything. There's no year in service dates, none of those kind of restrictions based on historical stuff. So you know, using later model, better cruisers is a perfectly viable, allowed thing to do in Federation Commander, where it might not always be the case in Starfleet Battles. Here's another older booster, number 10. This is another one that was missing from my collection. I really like the look of these new fast cruisers. Basically, these were designed more for the strategic game of the Starfleet universe, Federation and Empire, but they do represent them in the tactical gaming system by just having these guys have lots of warp power. So they've got 3 warp engines, loads of juice, loads of power to run their weapons and keep up a high speed, which is cool. Got some Federation strike cruisers, which have, what do they got? They've got 4 shuttles, yeah, and decent amount of transporters, actually, and 4 photons, not too bad. Federation battle frigates, these are tough little customers with 3 photons, despite being on a small frame here. It's pretty cool. Then we got some Romulan K5R destroyers using Klingon hulls here. Another strike cruiser, another battle frigate, another destroyer, and then a Romulan Sparrowhawk light cruiser, which has mostly phaser armaments with 2 plasma Fs in the rear and a plasma S as well. So relatively limited plasma armament on this one, but it's not a very big ship, so I'm not going to necessarily mount a plasma R on it. All right, sorry, I'm going to try and speed these up. All right, so these are the Transports Attacked ones, so we'll come back to those. All right, another early booster, booster number 3. This one, as you can tell from the cover, has a mix of different races in here. We've got the Kazintis with a Command Cruiser. Always nice, the Command variants. Usually just they have more options than the regular cruisers, which is always a good thing. And this one, of course, can control 12 seeking weapons at once. Fill the board with drones. We've got a Tholian heavy cruiser, which is kind of 2 smaller ships welded together across this big central hull. We've got a couple of web generators, but not web casters, and primarily phaser and disruptors. Then we've got the classic Tholian Patrol Corvette. If you see the original Tholian Web episode, this is the little ships that are flying around spinning the web the whole time. Phasers, and that's it, actually. Phasers and web. That's all they got. We've got a Kazinti battle cruiser. Lots of drones, as you would expect. However, this one cannot control 12 seeking weapons like the Command Cruiser. We have a frigate, which has a limited range disruptor, which is a bit unfortunate, but it is a tiny ship. So probably doesn't have that much power to throw into the heavy weapons. Then we have another one of those. Then we've got an Orion Pirate Raider, which, so you can... where are the option mounts? So it's got some drones, phaser 3s. Yeah, so you've got an option mount in the front, so you could choose different heavy weapons for that. Yeah, back to the start. All right, picking up speed. What do we got next? We've got Booster 8. So this is a battle between the Gorns and some, well, they might be, no, they're Romulan Kestrels. So they're using Klingon hulls, but they're all Romulans, don't be fooled. You can see the plasma tracks here. So the Krc Command Cruiser, again, nice to have a command variant. Got some Plasma D launchers, Plasma S's on the side, Plasma F's in the rear, and phasers up front. Seems pretty well-balanced armament. Gorn Command Cruiser as well. We've got 2 Plasma S's in the middle, flanked by Plasma F launchers, and then just phasers in the back. No rear-mounted plasma, looks like. A bunch of shuttles, which is typical for the Gorns. Like to use suicide shuttles and Marines and stuff. Some more armed priority transports. I already have too many of those. Gorn Battle Cruiser. Smaller Gorn ship. We've got a Plasma G, though, so it still packs a decent punch on that one. And another Gorn Destroyer. And then we're back to a Romulan Heavy Cruiser. So yeah, a bit less armed up than the Command Cruiser. And you can see the point value difference, so the Heavy Cruiser is 132 and the Command Cruiser is 184. So there is a lot more weaponry and options on the Command Cruiser. All right, keep it moving. Keep it moving. Now these are all Gorns all the time. We've got a fast battle cruiser with big chunky warp engines. Look at all that juice. We've got 4 batteries as well, which always helps. Plasma S's, Phaser 1s. Yep, not a super amount of heavy weapons, but it'll get around the board quickly. That's pretty sure. Medium cruiser. What do we got here? We got 2 Plasma S's. That's a little better. But yeah, definitely less power to play with on that one. Then the Battle Destroyer with a Plasma G in the middle and a couple of Plasma Fs. Yeah, what's that? 98 points, not too bad. Looks, as is typical of the Gorns, you know, their ships are pretty hardy for the point value. Another destroyer, heavy destroyer. Yeah, this one gets a Plasma S in the middle, so that's a little bit nicer, and that costs us another 17 points. But yeah, another heavy destroyer, light cruiser. So here we focus more on, we got lab and shuttle spaces, no Plasma G in the middle there, but we do have the Plasma S's. And yeah, another light cruiser. Cool. I feel I've neglected the Gorns in these games. I do need to spend some time with them, to get more familiar with them. All right, I was looking forward to these boosters. These are Saltorians and Tholians. Really like them both, but mainly the Tholians. Here we have a Tholian Heavy Web Cruiser, which has a webcaster, which I've mentioned before. This allows you to throw web off into the distance to block enemy weapons fire, make your enemies run into it and get stuck. It's really, really cool and interesting to use tactically. So always glad to have another webcaster ship. Here we have a Neotholian light cruiser, again with a webcaster in the front. Tons of phasers, 4 disruptors as well. Neotholian ships are always really fun for me. Another Neotholian light cruiser, Neotholian Frigate. This one is too small to have a webcaster, but it can still spin and maintain web. And it does still have a couple of disruptors. Another Neotholian Frigate. Then we got the Saltorians. Tholians, rebellious subject race. What do they got? A couple particle cannons in the front, along with phaser 1s and phaser 3s. And then a web breaker mounted in the front. So web breaker, of course, specialized to break Tholian webs. So look out for that. Yeah, and another Saltorian destroyer. And then a new heavy cruiser for the Saltorians. That looks fun. What do we got here? Particle cannons. Lots of phaser 1s in the front. That's always good. 2 web breakers. More phaser 1s. 2 particle cannons. Yeah, it's pretty hefty. 142 points. So yeah, it would be fun to have a duel with this and try and see if I can keep my Tholians together. All right, very good, very good. So the new ships in this one are, in fact, that new heavy cruiser I just showed you and the Tholian heavy web cruiser. Very cool. Yeah. Now we got more Tholians and Saltorians. What do we got? Tholian web tender. These ships, basically, they have big power reactors, and their job is to slowly tootle along the web fortifications you've constructed and keep them loaded with power so the enemy can't break through. Very Not very glamorous, but very, very useful, particularly in a siege type scenario or a base defense. Neotholian destroyer. Does that have a webcaster? It does. Fantastic. Yeah, nice to have a webcaster for 100 points. Definitely useful. Another destroyer. We've got Tholian War Cruisers. So here we forgo the webcasters. We've just got regular web generators, but we do have more weaponry in the form of disruptors. 4 on the front, or on the left and right side, and a few phaser ones up front as well. Not too shabby. Then we've got Saltorian Frigates, smaller Saltorian ships. Do these still have a web breaker? So that's good. And just 1 particle cannon in the front. So still a decent range of armaments. We've got, what, 8 weapons for a frigate. It's not too bad. And a light dreadnought. Here we go. Look at all these particle cannon tracks. Not bad at all. So this is 175 points of beefiness for the Saltorians. It's got a triple hull design. As you can see, we've got particle cannon, particle cannon, particle cannon. 6 phaser ones. Then 4 more phaser ones, 2 web breakers, two more particle cannons. Yeah, loads of weaponry up here. I really don't play the Saltorians enough. I definitely need to. I think because of my bias toward the Tholians, I just kind of feel like I'm betraying myself if I play the Saltorians. But definitely I should familiarize myself with how they play a bit more. So these boosters here, 19, 20, and 21, are all for the Distant Kingdoms module for Federation Commander. So these are the expanded empires that were added to the Starfleet universe. And they include my favorite Hydrons. So here we go. Lyran Fast Tiger raiding cruisers. Again, with the formula to make it an LDR ship. Yeah, a couple ESGs. Lots of warp. It's pretty good. Hydron Thoroughbred Fast Cruiser. I'm not actually familiar with this ship, so I'm looking forward to that one. 160 points plus 30 points of fighters. Decent amount of warp energy. And 2 Hellbores. Yeah, could always do with more Hellbores, but at least it's got a couple. Then we got a couple of Lyran frigates. Little compact 67-point ships. Yeah, we got a couple of disruptors, 1 ESG. But they can still do some damage. Still pack a little bit of a punch. Then we got a Lyran Jaguar War Cruiser. This is a bit more like it. 128 points. Phaser 1s up front, as well as your ESG heavy armament, and a disruptor on the rear arc. That's cool. Is that the same thing? It is. Yeah, and then we have the Dragoon heavy cruiser. This one has 4 Hellbores. That's what I'm talking about. 148 points plus 30 points of fighters. Very useful, as always. Yeah, Phaser 1s, Phaser 2s, and Hellbores. And Phaser Gs on the side as well. Cool. Excellent. All right, love the Hydrons. Always glad to have more for them. And the Lyrans are fun too, but I'm not very good with them because you really do need to be kind of at knife fighting range the whole time. Hydron Mongol Medium Cruiser. This one's a bit of a classic. So this can furnish up to 6 fighters. You can see the 6 shuttle spaces there, shaded green for fighters. This one's only 100 points, so we just have fusion beams on this one. We don't have any Hellbores because they are more expensive technology. But it's an effective way to bring some fighters into battle fairly cheaply. And a couple of those Mongols. Then we've got the Hydron Knight Destroyer. No fighters on this one, but it does have 2 Hellbores. And it's only 90 points. So, yeah, decent armament. And, of course, a couple of Phaser Gs to protect your flanks as well. Then we have the Frigate, which does have a Hellbore in the front, despite only being 61 points. So that's really cool. As with all the Hydrons, without fighters, I mean, you really do need to get in close to get the most mileage out of your heavy weapons. So you probably want to have these guys as part of a larger fleet. Lay down some covering fire with your big guys and let the frigates and fighters come tearing in and rip everybody to shreds. I like these guys, the Mohawks. Here we have 4 fusions up front, so very effective at close range. 4 shuttles, and what do we got? 8 fighters, so not too bad there at all. That would be a total of 191 points if you bring all the fighters, so pretty reasonable. Then the Lord Bishop Command Cruiser. This is one of the new ones for this booster pack. This one is more my speed because we got Hellbores, which are just really interesting to fight with. I just like using them. But it does have fusion beams in the front as well, and you can carry 3 fighters. So what's not to love? Loads of great stuff. All right. So this booster is all about the Hydras, so I don't know why I waited this long to get it, frankly. All right, we're almost there, guys. We're getting through it. All right, now we have Booster Pack 21 is Lyrans and Wind Cluster, WYN Cluster, however you say it. So we have a heavy cruiser for the WYN, 151 points. Got some Phaser 3s and Phaser 1s up front. 2 drone racks on the side and 2 option mounts. Each option mount could be a drone rack or a Phaser 1, depending on your preferences. Yeah, not too shabby. We've got a Bengal Tiger Command Cruiser, another great command variant. 4 disruptors in the front, Phaser 1s and Phaser 3s to the side as normal, and 2 expanding sphere generators for 155 points. We've got Wind Cluster Auxiliary Battle Cruiser. So you've got a bunch of option mount here, which again can be, in this case, they can be Phaser 1s, drone racks, or disruptors. I think these auxiliary ships are kind of the bread and butter of the WYN cluster. I don't really know for sure, but I think you know, they're kind of a pirate enclave of outcasts from different empires. So they cobble together their ships and weapons from whatever they can find. And so a lot of their fleets tend to be this type of thing. Lots of option mounts on a sort of general purpose ship souped up for battle. And we got a war cruiser also for the WYN cluster. Yeah, same deal as the others, but we've got 4 disruptors in the back on this one, so that's useful. A destroyer with 2 disruptors in the back. And 2 option mounts along with 2 drone racks. What's the turn mode B? Yeah, the WIN ships tend to be pretty maneuverable, shall we say. Then we got Lyran Leopard destroyers. Yeah, pretty much what you'd expect. Phaser 2s in the front, Phaser 2s and 3s on the sides, and 1 expanding sphere generator. And yeah, I think we're back to... Oh, yeah, this is the last one. Tiger Heavy Cruiser, 4 disruptors in the front, plus 4 Phaser 1s. It's pretty punchy up in the front there. And a couple of ESGs as well. Yeah, definitely want to get in close and slice and dice with some of these guys. All right. Next up, we have, there were 3 boosters associated with the War and Peace expansion, which includes the Vudar, the ISC, and the Andromedans. I put off getting the Vudar booster for a while because I'm just not that familiar with them. But I think they're pretty cool, actually. They use ion-based weaponry, and this ship gives them enough to field a full fleet, basically, plus you have a command variant added to the game system in this pack, so it's always good. And here it is. This is the command variant, so we've got 2 ion cannons in the front. Their thing, as I remember, is that there's a 2-hit roll involved, but they do the same damage at any distance in their range. So they're good for, you know, having a fairly predictable damage output compared to some other options. So that's kind of interesting. But I'm sure that feeds into the tactics in ways that I don't yet understand. But that's why I got the tactics manual, right? Look into that later. Yeah, and we've got ion cannons here, and yeah, ion pulse generators as well. Yeah, then we've got the heavy cruiser. Again, really not much I can say about these because I don't understand the Vudar well enough yet. But it's nice to have all these options. So what have we got so far? We've got the command cruiser, a heavy cruiser, then we've got a war cruiser, 2 war cruisers, in fact. You can see another one back here. There's 2 of these guys, 125 points, 2 ions in the front, 2 in the back. The rest are, we've got a couple of Phaser 1s in the front, and the rest are smaller phasers, and then the IPGs in the center. Interesting. Then we've got a couple of war destroyers and a couple of war frigates. So these are the smaller end of the scale. So we're just down to 1 IPG heavy weapon and a couple of ion cannons. Yeah, and the frigate, the smallest, at 65 points. Cool. I mean, I really do need to familiarize myself with these guys. I was so focused on the Andromedans in War and Peace and the ISC to a bit lesser extent, but I really like the Andromedans a lot in Starfleet battles and in Federation Commander. All right, so we're almost there. Almost done, guys. Now let's look at the boosters for Transports Attacked, which are all new stuff. You can see on the back here, 7 laminated cards. So these are, again, not super exciting ships, but they are new. So if you want stuff that's new and not repeats, Transports Attack might be one to put on your list. So Q ships are interesting. They look like freighters, but they're actually secretly more heavily armed. And any empire will use these to sort of hide amongst their convoys and surprise enemy raiders and pirates. And it gives you here a list of what different option mounts different races can use for their Q ships. So if you're playing the Feds, for example, you want to hide a Q ship in a convoy in a scenario, then your Q ship could have photons, phaser ones, or drones. Whereas Klingons, Kazintis, and WIN would use disruptors, phaser twos, blah, blah, blah. You get the idea. And actually, Hydrans can shove some Stinger 2 fighters in there, which is fantastic. So Q ships are actually pretty cool. We've got a cargo patrol Corvette, which is a tiny little guy, only 50 points. Again, lots of cargo it can carry, but not a lot of armament. Kazinti Combat Tug. So this is presumably a heavily armed version of the tug we saw in the main set, and that looks to be the case. We've got a lot of weapons there, actually. Yeah, look at that. We got phaser ones. We've got 4 drone racks. We've got a lot of disruptors. What about drones? Can we fire 12 drones? Doesn't look like it. Still, though, not too bad. For a tug, we've got a fast courier. Don't know when you'd want to use this particularly. I think it's going to be, again, a scenario thing, not something you'd add to a battle force. I mean, there's only one phaser 1, so this is not a combat ship. We've got a large armed freighter. This is a big freighter, but it's got more guns on it. Phaser 2s, some with 360-degree arcs, and some phaser 3s in the back for defense. Small armed freighter, same deal basically, just with less armaments. Fast naval transport, so I guess these are a bit speedier than other transports. They do look to have fighter spaces as well. Yeah, we're back to the Q ship. Yeah. All right, so then we have that's a booster 31, booster 32. In this one, we get another combat tug, a couple of light tactical transports, jumbo freighter, a large Q ship, and a free trader. That's an interesting selection, actually. So this is a Klingon Fleet Tug. Got a decent number of disruptors on this one, so a little bit better on the armaments front. ISE tactical transport. No PPDs on this one, though. No plasmatic pulsar devices, but we do have some phaser ones and plasma Fs in the side arcs, which is at least something. ISC tug. Nope, I think PPDs are more rare and expensive weapons, so they don't put them on everything. Vidar light tactical transport. We were just trying to figure out those guys before, and I'm not any more enlightened than I was 2 minutes ago, so really need to look them up more. Jumbo freighter. Almost no weaponry, so this is again going to be a scenario ship. Free traders. I think these would be useful if you're playing the Prime Directive, which is the Starfleet Universe RPG, and you wanted to use Federation Commander to run your space battles. So you'd probably be running around in a ship like this rather than a giant Starfleet vessel, for example. So yeah, that's booster 32. And finally, the last item for today, this is booster 33. I don't know why this one came in a cool bag and the other ones did not, but hey, what can you do? This one is actually the one booster I was most interested in because it has Andromedans in it. Yay. We've got Romulan Freight Eagle Transport with quite a few batteries there, which is interesting. I guess to help it get out of a jam if it becomes attacked, you'll have lots of reserve power. Got a Romulan Sparrowhawk light tactical transport. We've got some phasers. We've got some plasma, plasma F, plasma F, plasma S. Yeah, not too bad. Here we go, Andromedan Caravel. So these have lots of cargo space, but they do still have hangar spaces as well. So they can hold Andromedan satellite ships, which are pretty beefy. They're full-on, destructive forces in themselves. So along with your cargo, you'll have this cavernous hangar filled with people you can beam out in giant satellite ships and defend yourself. So I'm interested to play some of these, see how they work in practice, because it's kind of a mix between a cargo vessel and like a mothership kind of thing. This is the Galleon, so yeah, a little bit more points than the Caravel. And what do we get for that? We get more batteries. Andromedans, each battery on an Andromedan stores 5 points of power rather than 3, or rather than 1, rather. And this one can hold 24 points of satellite ships. So it's got a double size hangar, which is awesome. So you hold like a whole fleet inside there. So that's cool. 2 displacement devices. It's always handy, which they allow you to teleport ships around. Then we've got a Lyran Cougar Fleet Tug. Nothing much out of the ordinary here. Just 2 big pods, along with the usual Lyran armaments. Heavy freighter ore carrier. That's very specific. Huh. There must be some kind of scenario to do with this. And then more armed priority transports. So I've got a lot of those. So yeah. Woo. Thanks for sticking with me through this epic reveal, guys. I had a lot of stuff built up in these 2 parcels. Anyway, I hope that gives you an idea of some more stuff that's out there for these 2 game systems. If anybody wants, I will go through and talk more about some of the new stuff in here as I become familiar with it. So in particular, the X ships in SFB, the transports tact stuff for FedCom, and the Vudar for FedCom, who I am quite ashamed I don't know very much of anything about them. But yeah, I hope that was useful for some of you if you were considering getting into these game systems. As I continue to beef up my collection and complete things and buy any new stuff, I will come back and show it off from time to time. And this will be alongside the other videos I plan to do, introducing you to the different expansions in both games and help you to understand what you can buy and what give my review of these different modules, because there are so many of them. So yeah, let me know what you think in the comments. If you're into SFB or FC, do get in touch. I'm always happy to talk about it, play it, whatever you want to do. And in the meantime, as always, stay safe, stay healthy, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video. All right, bye-bye.